5 Live Formula One.
Good morning and welcome to 5 Live F1. We're in Singapore for the 18th round of the season at F1's original night race. It's a tough, challenging street circuit with one practice session to go before we head into qualifying this afternoon, or in Singapore later into the evening once the floodlights come on. Guiding you through all the action is myself, Harry Benjamin, and alongside me is the man who won GP2's last ever race around this Marina Bay street circuit. It's Sam Bird. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Harry. How are you?
I'm very well. Fond memories of Marina Bay?
Seems like a long time ago now. You had to Wikipedia that, didn't you?
I did actually have to Wikipedia. I was just looking actually at the race report from the 2013 GP2 Marina Bay street round. Didn't get pole though, did you?
No, I didn't.
That went to Jolyon Palmer.
It did indeed, yes.
Shocking.
Yes.
And you finished, where was the podium? Marcus Ericsson, you beat Marcus Ericsson and Fabio Lima.
Fabio Lima, indeed, yeah, he was the eventual champion that year. But on to 2025, and we've got FP3 coming up.
So excited. Of course, the track has changed a little bit since 2013. We don't have that old Singapore Sling chicane anymore.
We didn't have the Singapore Sling when I raced there. No, so they'd already changed that. What has changed, though, is the 15-16 section. The track is effectively only a couple of 150 meters shorter, but
basically we're not going by the water side anymore.
Exactly.
And it used to cut left 90 degrees under a little bridge grandstand before you then came back out on the way to turn 16 and 17.
Yeah, effectively the lap times are over 10 seconds a lap faster now due to this straight lining from effectively turn 15 down to 16. I think the new layout is much better for the modern F1 car.
Yeah, well, so far the times are coming down incrementally with each session because, well, we had 2 practice sessions yesterday. FP1 is in the daylight as the sun then sets, so that makes FP2 really the only representative session we've had so far, because once again we're back in the daylight before qualifying comes on later in the evening. So it's almost a bit like a sprint weekend where you only get really one proper representative session to do all your quali and all your race sim work.
Yeah, absolutely. So last night was the one session where everybody wanted to get decent track time and they didn't get it. I think I counted something like 23 minutes of wasted track time due to red flags. I don't know why with this particular event, with that one FP session being so valuable, why they don't stop the clock when there's a red flag. You know, F1, it's the main event. There's time to do it. It's a night event. Keep the lights on. Let the guys get 60 minutes of practice in. You know, everybody's long runs were compromised. A lot of people's qualifying runs were compromised. Yeah, we lost a lot of running last night. There are quite a few people as well, Harry, that will need to do homework in these difficult conditions that are not representative, no more so than people that had difficult days yesterday. George Russell, Liam Lawson and this Saubers, I think those 4 cars especially will need to put in a decent chunk of running this morning.
They certainly will. It was a disrupted session yesterday with those 2 red flags for the crashes of Russell and Lawson, as Sam was mentioning there. We're a couple of minutes, less than that, away from getting this final FP3 session underway, and our eyes and ears on the ground. But I think she's starting off in the paddock. Let's say good afternoon for the first time to Jenny Gao.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all good. I'm just under the Singapore Flyer, which looks a little bit like the London Eye, and in front of me is the Red Bull Racing Hospitality Unit, and I'm surrounded by about 100 people, all waiting for a glimpse of Max Verstappen. And then if I look up to the stands, there's 2 floors, all the Paddock Club, and there's about 200 people also waiting for a glimpse of a driver. The driver they're waiting for is Max Verstappen, even though the session is going live and green. This is not the most representative, but I have to tell you, it's quite muggy. It started off very sunny. It's clouded over now, and sunset is in about 2 hours. So let's see what happens, but still no sign of Max Verstappen.
Clearly not in a huge rush is the reigning champion, who is not yet out of the equation for this year's title, having won the last 2 races on the trot. This is how the championship standings lie. It is Oscar Piastri who still maintains the head of the championship, though only by 25 points as the clock goes green, and the Haas of Oliver Behrman is the first car out on track. Lando Norris sits second. Then Max Verstappen, 69 points back from Oscar Piastri's current lead. Russell and Charles Leclerc make up the top 5, and then in the Constructors' Championship it is McLaren who lead the way and should seal the Constructors' title come the checkered flag on Sunday night in Singapore. Mercedes are second, then it's Ferrari third, Red Bull further adrift in fourth. Williams, with their podium last time out for Carlos Sainz in Baku, have rather cemented their position in fifth. Nice battle though for sixth, 17 points between Racing Bulls, Aston Martin and Sauber. Then Haas and Alpine are 9th and 10th, a little further adrift at the bottom of the field. Bit of work going on Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari on the front end. Last couple of tweaks being made as the other Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda is wasting no time and heading straight out on track. But Sam, I mean, we'll be talking about this all since, Baku, and obviously it was a win in Italy as well for Max Verstappen. It seems that Red Bull have refound their form and a way forward. And Max Verstappen behind the wheel of one of their cars, you'd be a fool to rule him out of a championship just yet.
Yeah, you can't rule out Max Verstappen, can you? The only thing I would say, though, is that Monza and Baku are outliers with regards to car setup and aerodynamics in comparison to a lot of other tracks that we go to across the season. Those two suit the Red Bull car a lot more than they suit the McLaren. Here, I think that it's a little bit of both. You do need the straight line speed, but you do need cornering ability. And we've seen the front wing of that Red Bull absolutely like a barn door. That top element that Max Verstappen was running yesterday, really, really high, but working very nicely. I still think, clearly, McLaren are favourites, aren't they? They've got a big lead at this point in the championship, and I think that their car is good enough to get them across the line. But if anybody could do it, Max Verstappen could.
He could prove a thorn in the side of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, that is for sure. Just in terms of the McLaren team taking the Constructors' title, they have a 333-point lead over Mercedes. 346 points can still be scored from the remaining 3 sprint weekends and 4 normal Grand Prix weekends that we have left. Mercedes would need to outscore them by 31 points. So if one McLaren is on the podium or both McLaren drivers finish in the top 7 on Sunday, they will secure at least 14 points and the title, regardless of where Mercedes or Ferrari finish. So those are the permutations around McLaren taking what would be their 10th Constructors' World Championship. So that will be a big focus for them. Those who wish to do a sync up, by the way, it's coming at you now. It's 56 minutes and 57, 56, 55, 54 seconds remaining as Ollie Behrman goes fastest in the middle sector. About 9 cars out on track at the moment, and making her way to pit lane now is Jenny Gow.
Yes, I'm just in front of Max Verstappen's car. He's still right here, so no rush for that side of the garage. As you said, Yuki Tsunoda already out, and the McLarens have just headed out as well on the set of the yellow banded tyres. It was Lando Norris going out first, and then Oscar Piastri just behind him following on. And just as a note of reference, yesterday there was a little incident in the pit lane with Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari driver, being let out into the path of Lando Norris in his McLaren. It did seem quite costly because they had to replace the whole of the front wing on that McLaren. It cost them €10,000. They were fined by the FIA, Ferrari. So not a driver incident, more a team error incident. So €10,000 was the cost.
And that's actually a harsher penalty than they would normally give for a practice sort of pit lane infringement. But you saw it yesterday as well, Sam. I mean, what did you make of that incident? These things do happen in pit lane, but ultimately Charles Leclerc couldn't do anything about it.
Well, the teams are in such a hurry to send their cars out in that situation. When the FIA announces what time the pit lane's going to go green, teams are then allowed to let their cars out and go and queue at the end of pit lane. And obviously track positioning is so critical and key in order to get peak performance out of your car and your tyres. Everybody wants to get out and get in the pit lane and be ahead of as many cars as possible. And I think it's getting it's getting a little bit too tight in some of these tracks. These cars are big cars, and there's not enough room in some cases to get the lock on and go side by side. I think the FIA have got to look at this in the future and tweak the ruling on when cars are allowed to join the fast lane.
Down through the gears into turn 7. That was the sound of Lando Norris, with McLaren fans packing out the grandstands here at Singapore. Norris, who felt like he was struggling to find performance yesterday within himself. It was there in the car, but he didn't quite feel like he had it. It was about 0.4, nearly half a second adrift of his teammate Oscar Piastri by the end of FP2.
But it was just the final sector. Lando looks like he's maximising the potential in Sector 1 and Sector 2. He's right there. If not, even a little bit quicker than Oscar Piastri in the first 2 sectors. It's mainly turn 16 to turn 19 where Oscar seems to have 0.2 advantage over Lando Norris. Let's see if he's had a look at the data overnight, made some little tweaks in maybe software and balance of the car going into today's running.
Down into turn 16 and then immediately Fiji through the left-hander of 17. You're fed out so close to the wall there before you have the final 2 corners to contend with, and he goes fastest in these early stages for Lando Norris, a 1:32.379, but Oscar Piastri is on a lap at the moment. He's fastest through the middle sector. Let's see what the Australian, who currently leads the championship, has in his locker with his first proper flying lap on the board. It's not quite enough at this stage to pip Norris, but he slots in a couple of tenths behind, a 1:32.5.
Yeah, and again, we know that this is probably not the most representative session that we're going to see, but it looks from that opening lap like Lando's found something in Sector 3.
So we say that, and we are guilty of saying that all the time, especially when it's Singapore. It's not a representative session. What can a driver get out of this then? What if you can't get, if you can't match exactly the conditions? Air temperature at the moment is 31 degrees, track temperature 41.7 degrees, humidity is around about 60% at the moment. So we're getting a little bit of a traffic jam with Nico Hülkenberg trying to find his way past Lewis Hamilton over the Anderson Bridge. So what can you get out of a session?
Well, let's say that, for example, Lando Norris, he looked at the data last night with his engineer and maybe noticed, there's something in my driving that I need to do differently in between turn 16, 17. Oscar maybe was opening up turn 17 more and creating a better exit, creating more drive from 17 to 18 and then through 18 and through 19 towards the finish line. That's a driving thing that he could learn from and he can practice today and get better at. The conditions are the conditions, but if there's a slight tweak in a line or how you're driving a corner, you can absolutely hone your driving skills to make sure you're doing a better job in the car. That's probably what I'd say is the main thing, is if there's anything where the driver can manipulate their skill set and make sure that they're on the top of their game.
There's always something to be learned, regardless if the conditions aren't exactly what we're going to be seeing for qualifying later on this evening. But we've got 17 cars out on track at the moment. Charles Leclerc, Albon and Sainz just on their out laps. Still in the pit lane are the 2 Mercedes drivers who have not emerged, and still no sign of Max Verstappen. Jenny Gao.
Yes, it's a very laid-back start to the Sunday, isn't it? This is not a very Saturday, I'm so sorry. This is not a very representative session. It's light, it's warm, it's very different to how qualifying will be. So Max Verstappen is now in the garage, so all the people that were waiting for him to come out, at least they've seen him. He's just putting on his helmet, he's put on his fireproof clothing already, obviously. I didn't see whether he had the cool vest on or not, because there's a new rule this weekend that I'm sure the boys will tell you about in a moment. I didn't get to see whether he was wearing it or not, but he will slot himself into his Red Bull in just a moment and trundle out onto the track. But yeah, there's no immediate intensity in the garage. No problem, but no intensity.
Thanks, Jenny. As well, clearly same for the 2 Mercedes drivers who aren't in too much of a rush to get out there. 50 minutes and 35 seconds remaining. It's the 2 Piastris. It's the 2 McLarens who are fastest at the moment. Norris ahead of Piastri. Then comes Tsunoda, Behrman and Hadjar, the top 5. Hülkenberg is 6th ahead of Lawson, Ocon, Bortoleto, Gasly and Colapinto, the 11 drivers who have set any kind of representative lap time. The two Aston Martins have been out there but haven't put in a representative lap time. Sainz is currently flying through the first and middle sectors, but he's on the soft tyre.
That's what I was just about to remind you of, Harry. He's on the softs, which is, as we know, quite a bit quicker around this track here in Singapore than the medium compound tyre. Street circuit, so soft tyre gives you that extra grip. Will tend to give up a little bit on the second lap, but he goes 4 and a bit tenths faster than the McLaren duo.
Now, when we heard from Jenny there a moment ago, she brought up the cooling vest situation. Now, if you're just joining us, well, in the build-up to this weekend, we know that Singapore is probably the most challenging circuit on the calendar in terms of conditions, and the FIA actually declared a heat hazard. So just getting a little look at Carlos Sainz being rather held up by Lando Norris on his approach over the Anderson Bridge. It gets so tight, particularly in that middle sector. And Norris does just get out of the way and allows Sainz through.
A lot of time lost, though, there. We're now watching Franco Colapinto lock the loaded front tyre down into turn 14, I believe that was. He's done a nice little spin round. We've seen quite a few people down that escape road over the course of the free practices so far. But going back to the climate and the conditions here in Singapore, Harry...
Well, a heat hazard was declared.
It's horrid in the car. No, it really is. So obviously I've never driven F1 machinery around there. I've raced GP2 around there, and I've been there as reserve driver for Mercedes on a few occasions. And you have a nice, lukewarm shower in the morning to prepare yourself to get ready and feel fresh for the day. And you go down and you put your cologne on and you smell good, and then you walk outside and all that work is undone, because the moment you go outside, you're then wet again from the humidity and you just start to sweat, and you don't stop sweating all day. And then you put on Nomex fireproof underwear and a race suit, a balaclava, a helmet. You get into a black cockpit of a race car with with an engine right behind you. You sweat bucket loads. Mentally, this place is draining. Physically, it's challenging because of the heat as well. This is one of the most demanding places to go. I'd say here and Malaysia were on par as being just really fatiguing, as we see Lando Norris, purple sector 1, purple sector 2, wringing its neck on the exit of 17 and goes basically a second quicker than everybody. This track is ramping up.
Yep, tidy lap from Lando Norris. Physically demanding, as you say. You could lose, a driver loses 3 to 4 kilos through perspiration alone over the course of 2 hours of Sunday's Grand Prix. Do you wish, and actually have you raced with, in recent times, a cooling vest?
We tried it at Ferrari when I was at Ferrari in GTs. We tried it. I didn't like it, so I didn't run it. We had what they called air conditioning in the Ferrari, but we never ran it on because we wanted all the power we could, especially at Le Mans, because when you turn the AC on, it took a couple of horsepower away from the engine, and we were fighting with the Ford GTs that had all the waft in the world, so we had to turn it off and just suffer.
Oh. Brutal. Yeah, that is brutal.
Yeah, brutal.
Well, it is something they've introduced. So we'll come and explain the full reasoning and the regulations around that, because it has changed some of the weight of the cars as well. But before we do that, we haven't had a Verstappen in a while, and we haven't had either the Mercedes. I think Kimi Antonelli, though, has just emerged. Let's head back down to Jenny.
Yes, we've just seen Kimi Antonelli go out, and now George Russell has just gone out as well on the red-banded softest tyres. Remember, George had an incident yesterday. He lost control of the car, took the front end off, had to be replaced, and they had to do a full system shutdown and reboot, so he missed most of the session yesterday. So he's gone out again, not on the urgent hurry, but they've rebuilt that car and sent him out again to see what he can do around the streets of Singapore.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Just over 45 minutes remaining, so everybody out there now, with the exception of Verstappen.
And Lando, welcome back. That was a very good lap.
That's a nice positive message to get from your engineer. Welcome back.
Yeah, they have such a good rapport, don't they, those two? I think he knew that maybe there was some little elements in the driving yesterday he wasn't happy with. He sat down last night and maybe gone through it again this morning and just tweaked and refined a couple of things. We're not talking major things, Harry. It might be turning in half a metre too early here, or picking up the throttle half a metre too late in another place. We've got
it's the Racing Bulls that has found itself with damage, and I think it's hit the wall. It's Liam Lawson again, and it's big damage. The front wing off, the front right wheel damage. I think the rear right's taken a hit as well. He's got into the wall at turn number 8. So the right-hander, just approaching the right-hander, he's off the racing line. Well, the red flag has come out, and so everybody will have to make their way back to the pits. But that is another costly hit for the Kiwi when he is still very much a man fighting for a contract for next year.
Now, we haven't seen a replay yet. Fortunately, he's got on the radio, told his team that he's okay. We're just about to see a replay now. It's in 7, and I think he's got on the curb. Yep. So what happened there, it looks really clumsy, but it's actually really easy to do. The curb there, it's just a curb lying effectively on the exit on its own, solitary. It picks the car up. He's lost drive and then spun the rear wheels up, and that's caused the accident.
He crashed yesterday into the wall on the exit of turn 17.
Are you okay?
Yeah, mate, I'm so sorry. I don't even know what happened. I just got the curb.
Yeah, so he's got the curb in the middle of the car. That's picked the car up. The tyres are no longer in complete contact with the ground. The rear wheels have spun up, and then he's a passenger from that point onwards. And that, for Liam Lawson, is not what he wants.
Good to see him out of the car, the medical car already on the scene as he gets into the back of the Aston Martin medical car, and the Racing Bulls pit wall looking on rather forlornly. Outside of the garage is Jenny Gow.
Yes, just outside the garage, as you say, and just looking at the mechanics and engineers, they seem obviously disappointed. One side of the garage is number 6 side, gathered around Isaac Hadjar, just trying to cool him down, the other driver at Racing Bulls. But there's a lot of glum faces, and I think the most disappointed person here will be Liam Lawson. He was really hoping that Baku would have spurred him on to get a better run of results, a better consistency. But I think these drivers know what's at stake at the moment. They know that Red Bull are recruiting, and as a Red Bull driver, junior or senior, unless you're Max Verstappen, life is never easy, it's never guaranteed. So the Williams cars are just making their way back into the garage now. But yeah, I think, sorry, I'm just doing a little dance with one of the mechanics. We were both trying to get out of the way at the right time. Yeah, they are both desperate to keep their seats, and it causes a lot of pressure, and we talk about pressure down here a lot, and it has a very much an effect on these drivers.
It does, but for the 23-year-old Liam Lawson, off the back of a career best finish in Baku, qualified in the top 3, finished 5th, and at a track where he actually took his career first points back in 2023 when he subbed in for Daniel Ricciardo. It's not been the cleanest of Fridays and now Saturdays for Liam Lawson, who's given his team a little bit of a job to do before we go qualifying later.
Yeah, not ideal just before qualifying. I know that this session, as we've said 5 or 6 times on it already, isn't necessarily the most representative.
I think we have to ban the R word.
Yeah, but crashing in successive free practice sessions is going to mentally be very challenging for him going into qualifying. And as well, his teammate is doing a really blinding job right now.
Hadjar, at the moment he's currently up in 4th, but he's been incredibly strong all season long, hasn't he? 8 Grand Prix points finishes, that podium we cannot forget in Zandvoort, which he was 4th on the road until Lando Norris's retirement, but he had earned that 4th and was on pure pace alone, so the podium was justified. He's actually outscored his Hadjar both Ferrari drivers since the summer break. He's scored 17 points compared to Charles Leclerc's 14 and Lewis Hamilton's 12. So I think it also goes to show how well that Racing Bulls car operates. We've talked about it before. It's more of maybe a benign car. It's more acceptable for different driving mechanisms.
Yeah, I think the drivability of the Racing Bulls car is pretty good. Is it the fastest car out there? No, nowhere near. But you're able to be a consistent point scorer throughout the season, is what I'd say. And on its day, it can be right up there. But I think Isaac Hadjar, from the disappointment in Australia where he didn't even get to race because he crashed on the warm-up lap or the way out of the pits, to now, what an amazing rookie season he's had.
Can I ask a question, Sam? How much, and obviously this is biased because you are a driver, but how much of the percentage of the overall effect is down to the driver and how much is down to the car? Because we know Max is amazing. We know that the McLaren is an amazing car this year and for most of last year. So how much do you think the driver can make that difference?
The driver makes that last little difference, Jenny. It's hard to quantify in terms of a percentage, but put it into tenths of a second. I think, you know, on any given day, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, for example, at McLaren, they've got the fastest car this year. Now, on their day, they can outperform each other by a tenth or, on odd occasions, 0.2 of a second. So it's very, very close. Max Verstappen, different beast. He's able to outperform anybody that jumps in the Red Bull by half a second or more 95% of the time. It is all about the car, but the driver can and does make a difference as well. Some drivers make a bigger difference. I'd say Max Verstappen is in his own little league of making a bigger difference. Most other drivers, it's a couple of tenths. Max is a bit more.
What do you think this does?
Maybe Fernando, but I don't put Fernando in that bracket with Max at the moment, just based on the fact that I don't think his teammate is strong enough to suggest that he's there with Max in that bracket of being able to make a bigger difference.
Okay, for Liam Lawson though, what do you think this does for him and his future? We know, you know, Tsunoda's also vying for whatever one remaining seat is. Hadjar may well get promoted. He may well stay where he is. We've got Arvid Lindblad in Formula 2 circling, and there's rumours now around Alex Dunn, who's just parted way with the McLaren development programme. We know Helmut Marko's been saying some positive things about him. He's had talks with Red Bull. How do you see that playing out?
It's challenging for him because of the way that Red Bull operates around its young drivers. They expect them to perform, and if they don't perform, they bin that one off and they get another one in because they've got such an amount of talent in their young driver roster. It is difficult. 2 years ago, we were all speaking of Liam Lawson, thinking he's going to be the next big thing for Red Bull, and now we're speaking of him as if he's not good enough. This is a really talented young racing driver, that another one in the Red Bull roster, that responsibility and the challenge it weighs very heavily on the driver, and it looks as if it's going the way of not a wasted opportunity, I think that's harsh, but another one that goes begging just because it's too big a burden.
Session's going to resume in a couple of minutes, by the way, 5:54 local time, so cars just firing up and making their way down to the exit of the pit lane. I mean, if you look back through Lawson's career, some of the highlights: third place in Formula 2 back in 2022, then was part of the Red Bull programme, was acting as their reserve driver. He went over to Japan, finished second in Super Formula, which many say sort of almost bridges the gap between Formula 2 and Formula 1 in terms of raw pace, whilst then being a Red Bull and Racing Bull's reserve, got the 5 Grand Prix to replace Daniel Ricciardo when he had his wrist injury, and then got his F1 outings. But really, this is his first full Formula 1 season for Liam Lawson, so I don't think that should be underestimated.
And looking back at his junior Formula career as well, he didn't come from like mega money. He didn't have massive budgets. He was in cars that were okay cars, but not the best cars, and he was still able to perform. He also came second in DTM. Should have won the championship at the final round, but got taken out.
That was quite controversial, wasn't it?
I remember watching it. It was really controversial, but he's been quick in absolutely everything he's done. He hasn't forgotten how to drive. It's just when the pressure's on, mistakes can happen, and it's very, very challenging mentally. This sport especially is extremely challenging mentally, because you're talking of tenths of a second, hundredths of a second, and if there is something on your mind, if there is something going on behind the scenes, it can distract you.
Well, he's bounced back from hard times at the start of the season as Liam Lawson, and I'm sure him and the team will work together to make sure he is fit and ready for qualifying in a few hours' time. But the red flag has gone away and the green light has come on, so the pit lane getting busy, Jenny.
Very busy, and it's fascinating to watch actually the preparation that goes into getting your car into the right position, and actually watching the Williams. They are the penultimate garage, so you'd think they'd get out first, but actually they didn't. They left it too late, and then they had to force their way back into the queue of traffic that was waiting to go out at the traffic lights at the end of the pit lane, and it didn't quite work out as they hoped it would, so they had to do a bit of jiggling about and actually push Carlos Sainz back a little bit. No one was letting him out. McLaren definitely weren't letting him out, and then luckily he got in the way of the Ferrari actually let him out. But it was really interesting just watching the dynamics of them trying to push their way in.
Get your elbows out constantly in the pit lane. There's a fight on and off the track everywhere you look, but we are back underway. 34 minutes and 23 seconds remaining. Lando Norris quickest with a 1:31.0, 3/10 clear of Carlos Sainz, but Lando Norris doing his lap on the medium, Sainz on the soft. Behrman third ahead of Hadjar, Albon the top five, Piastri, Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon is eighth, who came into the pit lane just before the red flag and asked for pretty much everything to be changed on the car, because whatever had happened overnight, as labelled by him, made it a disaster. Hamilton 9th, Hulkenberg 10th ahead of Bortoleto, Leclerc's down in 12th ahead of Lawson, who's now out of the session. Colapinto and Gasly make up the top 15. The two Aston Martins, Alonso and Stroll, 16th and 17th, with Antonelli, Russell and Max Verstappen, who is finally now out on the track, having spent the first 20 minutes or so very firmly in the garage. This is the sound of George Russell, by the way, as we get the Mercedes up and running. He's put the soft tyre on, and with one car out of this session now, firmly in the wall, Liam Lawson. He's made it back to the pits. Jenny.
Yes, he has. He came back in the green Aston Martin medical car at quite some speed, actually, and was driven past his garage. So he's gone to the medical centre. On any sort of high-impact accident, you have to go to the medical centre. So we'll get checked up just as a precaution and then released. And I've made my way to Esteban Ocon's car. As you said, they're doing a lot of work on that. He was not happy in the first run. So they're just putting the engine covers back on. They'll fire it up and send him on his way.
Yeah, he's nearly a second back from his teammate at the moment, Behrman, who's up in third. Now, just to come back to the point about the cooling vest, this is the regulation at the start of any sprint session or race for which a heat hazard has been declared, which it has been in this case, the FIA issuing that document in the build-up to this weekend. All components of the driver cooling system must be fitted. The system must be functional and available for use by the driver. 5 kilograms is added to the minimum weight for the race and 2 kilograms for practice and qualifying. Now, it is not yet mandatory for the driver to actually wear the vest. That will become mandatory next year, but right now they're still fine-tweaking the design of it, because a lot of the drivers have trialled it out at various races this season. George Russell did it in Bahrain, I think Carlos Sainz did it in Saudi Arabia, and some of the tubes which connect almost around the rib cage can be quite uncomfortable for drivers out there. So we have a yellow flag out on track, and it is for Carlos Sainz, who's found the run-off down at turn 14 and has just gone straight on, finds reverse, which you don't see too often in Formula One, and manages to rejoin the track fairly innocuously. So Sainz back on the way. He's now third as Albon is second, so the two Williams running well but on the soft tyres. So drivers will be trialling out throughout the practice sessions how they feel with this cooling vest on, and when Carlos Sainz was trialling it, he said, well, it didn't really last for the whole duration of the race, and the downside of it could be that once it may well stop, and then you've just got more hot air being blown around, which can arguably then make the 60-degree cockpit even worse throughout 2 hours of racing. So you have the ballast added even if you're not wearing it, but you've got the added weight anyway, you may as well wear the vest. Exactly what you just said, Harry. Not if it's going to make you hotter towards the end of the race when you're the most tired that you've been.
Sonoda radio there, something about the drinks bottle.
It said it is horrible. So I imagine it's probably a bit hot, which is another factor here, isn't it? Because you can have water on board, but it will
drink
just
as well.
It will just heat up.
It's like tea. You know, you're thinking that when you're doing exercise on a treadmill in the gym, whatever, you'd want a nice cold bit of water, wouldn't you? Cool you down, hydrate you. Not in a Formula One car. It starts as cold water. After 5 minutes, it's lukewarm. After an hour, you're basically having hot water. That's what you're having. But that's, you know, it's better than nothing. As we see Isaac Hadjar having very close to the wall on the exit there of turn 14. How close is that? 3 centimetres to the wall. Super close to the wall.
Super close. I do enjoy those graphics that pop up on our screen. And too close sometimes we also get. I think Hamilton was 0 centimetres from the wall, which I would argue is perfection.
It is perfection. So earlier on we saw George Russell do his first competitive lap time of the day on the soft tyre, and Mercedes don't look quite so good in these hotter conditions in the daylight, do they? He's now on another outlap, presumably come in, made a change, small adjustment, and then back out again on the soft. So he'll be wanting to bridge that gap of nearly 0.7 of a second to Norris, who is still on the medium tyre. Albon, Sainz are sitting second and third. So the Williams looking pretty strong this weekend again. But let's see what they can do this evening. I actually think tonight's qualifying is going to be really close between a lot of cars. I think the McLarens, Verstappen, even Williams look okay, and they should be getting through to Q3. Fernando Alonso looked blinding in FP1 and FP2. If it hadn't been for the red flag, I think Fernando Alonso could have been right up there in FP2. So I think this is going to be a good fight. Also, Ferrari don't look too bad.
No, this is the thing, though, when you have really only one session where you can get a proper read on everybody's performance disrupted by a couple of red flags, it makes the overall picture a little blurry. I think McLaren are leading the way. Verstappen will be in the fight for pole position, but then you have this nice little battle behind, and you've got the Ferraris in there. But as you say, I think the Mercedes are going to have to be looking over their shoulders at the moment, because you've got quick Williams cars, you've got quick, well, at least one very quick Racing Bulls in the hands of Isaac Hadjar. Fernando Alonso in the mix too, back to a high downforce circuit. We saw the Aston Martin perform well at these similar characteristic tracks previously, Zandvoort, Hungary. So I think especially that little higher end of the midfield fight is going to be absolutely incredible to watch under the lights.
Absolutely. We're now watching Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari doing a little bit of a race run on the medium compound tyre. I think this was scheduled, but also nobody really got any race running in yesterday due to the fact that there were so many red flags and the session was so much shorter. Fernando Alonso making his way through the final sector. I think he's doing something similar. Definitely doing something similar as he's on the medium compound, comes across the line 5.5 seconds off. So I'm sure
doing some long run.
I'm sure long run corner, if he's around. We
didn't get it yesterday because of the disrupted session.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need long run corner.
Yeah, a weekend doesn't feel complete, does it, without a bit of long run corner?
No.
But Alonso's certainly trying to get an idea of whether Aston Martin performs relative over race pace. We are expecting a one-stop strategy here across Sunday's Grand Prix, medium, hard, medium. But we have got an increased pit lane speed. It's gone from 60 kilometres an hour to 80 kilometres an hour. So you're losing less time in the pits, which actually, depending on how the race unfolds, well, if you get safety cars and that throws a whole spanner into the works. But I wonder, it doesn't completely discount the possibility of a two-stop, because you're not losing as much time anymore.
I think it opens up a little bit of strategy. Yeah. It does make a difference of 3 or 4 seconds, I think. But I still think clearly one-stopping is the favoured option by everybody. But, you know, if there is a virtual safety car or something along those lines, people will be definitely looking at that.
Hello, Hello, Jenny. Have we got a Jenny Gowden?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you, so I didn't know when to come in, but I can come in now. Is that okay?
We are hearing you loud and clear, Jenny. You can come in.
Perfectly. I do apologise for being tardy. I was just thinking about safety cars and strategies, and looking at the chances of when a safety car comes out, and is most likely between here in Singapore, laps 28 to 38. I was saying, why is that? Why are the safety cars triggered around that point in time in Singapore specifically? And it's because that is around the time when people push really hard. That's around the pit stop time, and they are gunning for the fastest lap to do the undercut or overcut, whichever is more stronger here. So that's why when they're pushing so hard, the chances of a safety car are that much higher between laps 28 and 38. It's fascinating.
80% chance of a safety car, 40% virtual safety car, 0 red flags in the last 5 Singapore Grand Prix here. So that's one to bear in mind. But just to give you an idea, Lando Norris last year, incredibly dominant fashion, he started on the medium tyre. He went to around about lap 29, lap 30 before he put on the hards to go to the end. Hamilton, who started 3rd, he finished 6th, so he didn't have the race he wanted, but he started on the soft tyre, went to about lap 16 to 17, and then put on the hard and went all the way to the end.
Speaking of Lewis Hamilton, he's actually been noted by the stewards for a red flag infringement, so that might be another slap on the wrists for Ferrari, as they got yesterday with Charles Leclerc and the pit stop issue with Lando Norris. That was a €10,000 fine, sorry, as you said.
Verstappen on the radio, I'm losing the rear now, so didn't catch the last bit of that message.
He said, I'm losing the rear now with these tools. So within the cockpit, he'll have software to manipulate the balance of the car. They've obviously made a tweak with something, maybe some engine braking or something like that is effectively overheating the surface of those rear tyres and creating a little bit more oversteer.
Well, just over 20 minutes to go in this final practice session. Antonelli now fastest on the soft tyre, 1:37 ahead of Norris. Albon is the top 3, then it's Sainz and Hamilton the top 5. Hadjar, Verstappen, Russell, Behrman and Piastri the top 10. Now, we haven't heard from the BBC's F1 correspondent yet today, so we shall cross over to 5 Live's Race Centre. Good afternoon, Andrew Benson. We missed your long run corner yesterday.
Yeah, it was a tragedy for everybody, Harry, I'm sure.
That's what you get for a couple of red flags, isn't it? But I mean, what have we been able to gather then from, I'll say the R word, the one representative session that we've had, and about nearly 40 minutes of running in free practice 3?
Well, it was tricky because the reason there was no long run corner was because there was no long runs, basically, because of those 2 red flags, as you say. So we've not got a very clear picture, or not as clear a picture as we would normally have at this stage about relative pace, but it does look like McLaren are ahead with Verstappen, their likely closest challenger. He is expected to be in the battle for pole with them, but the question, it was interesting hearing the message about tools that he was talking about, losing the rear just then, because the question is, can Red Bull keep their tyres in good condition as long as McLaren, which traditionally this year they haven't been able to. It sounds like Verstappen and Red Bull are trying some setup tweaks with maybe the diff or something like that on the steering wheel to see if he can keep the tyres in shape for longer, but he's obviously running out of them on this run. He's only on lap 7 on these medium tyres, so that's not that encouraging for him. We were seeing yesterday that he was matching Piastri in sectors 1 and 2 for pace, but in the 3rd sector he was running out of tyres basically, so they're obviously working on that at Red Bull, because it's a hot race here, a long race. Tyre degradation is high, even though it's a street circuit, because there's so many traction zones. So that's one to keep an eye on for them.
It certainly is. And one to keep an eye on, do you think? We just mentioned it, Lewis Hamilton's been noted for a red flag infringement. Now, we saw that obviously quite a lot in Baku last time out in qualifying, and we haven't actually seen the infringement played out on the TV pictures. But do you think that's going to be something he needs to worry about?
I don't know what it is, that's the problem. Stewards take red flag infringements very seriously. You know, it can be things such as going too fast, or maybe you missed the pit entry when you're supposed to come in with a red flag, as we saw with Piastri, I think it was, in Baku last year. last race, or overtaking another car, which is also not allowed. It might be innocuous. It might end up being nothing. But if it's something that's on the more serious end of the scale, or something he could have avoided, as opposed to something he couldn't, like being too late to come into the pits, for example, he'd be let off for that. But if he's done something wrong, then it's usually a grid penalty for a red flag infringement. So until we see what it is or hear what it is, we won't be able to find out. But it looks like they'll probably be typical, I think. Or the teams and drivers have been pushing for serious incidents to be investigated after sessions or after races, so everyone has a chance to put their point of view. So I suspect that's probably what's going to happen with this one, that we haven't even heard on that front yet. We've only heard that it's been noted so far.
Exactly. Well, thanks, Andrew. We'll wait and see if that does get elevated, and if we get any replays or updates to bring you on the suspected infringement for Lewis Hamilton, we will be the first to let you know. Back on to the track action there. 90 minutes and 53 seconds to go. We're currently riding on board with George Russell. This is a good insight to how that Mercedes is performing at the moment. He's on a soft rubber, making his way down to turn 16 at the moment. Fastest of anybody in the first sector.
Absolutely, then throws it into turn 16. Looked like an early turn-in, but got away with it. Looks like the rear of the car is a little bit loose on turn-in, but it's the same for everybody in these hot conditions, and goes P4, 4 and nearly half a second away from his teammate Kimi Antonelli, who's currently quickest on a 1:30.760. So a little bit of work to do for George Russell.
Yeah, and it was Kimi Antonelli yesterday actually who looked a little adrift on pace. So Antonelli finding a bit more confidence perhaps today, a track he has never raced at before. Indeed, out of the rookies that we'll class in our crop for this year, only 2 have actually raced here before, in terms of Franco Colapinto, who was here last year, finished just outside of the points, and Liam Lawson from a couple of years ago. Ollie Behrman, Isaac Hadjar, Gabriel Bortoletto, Kimi Antonelli have not raced here, so they're getting their first taste of what the Marina Bay Street Circuit has to offer, as one of the Williams just had a little off down into the runoff area for a momentary yellow flag, but back on track now.
That was Alex Albon having a lock-up into turn 16. A lot of people snatching front brakes into 16 and into 14 as they're pushing the limits, especially on qualifying simulations. They obviously won't be pushing that hard on race simulations or indeed in the race, but it is something to look out for.
If you want to get in touch in the remainder of this 18 minutes of Free Practice 3, we'd always love to hear from you. Any questions or thoughts you have, you can get in touch on X using the hashtag BBCF1, or indeed you can email us. It's f1@bbc.co.uk. Phrase has just put in on hashtag BBCF1 to go back to our chat about the hot water that you're unfortunately forced to drink. Didn't Damon Hill suggest putting a tea bag in his water bottle for hot races so he could have a cup of tea whilst racing? Couldn't they just do that?
I mean, you could.
But where's the milk?
If that's your... Oh, can you imagine? Oh. I mean, like a F1 made cappuccino.
To be fair, it wouldn't bother Jenny because she only likes green tea, so there's no milk needed for that, is there, Jen?
How very British. I love it. There is no milk needed. I had a very nice jasmine green tea this morning. It would have worked very nicely in that whole water bottle as something to supplementary. And talking to some of the engineers about this cooling vest, it's run by basically a block of ice that sits in the car somewhere, and the whole heating or the whole cooling thing runs from that block, and it takes 2 days to get it down to the temperature and keep it there so that they can actually use that. It's fascinating, this new technology, and it seems like it, to me, logically, it should be standardised for every team, because every team is having to run it, or will have to run it in the future. But actually, no, it's left to the own team's interpretation, the way their car runs, the way they want to distribute the rate, which can be, again, if you are looking for advantage in F1. So, yeah, it's really interesting to hear the engineers saying what's behind the vest, not just for the cooling purposes.
Yeah, it's going to be really intriguing to see how this unfolds. I think Carlos Sainz actually said, though, whilst it's still very much in its early days of development in terms of where the tubes are sitting and how, in terms of the actual vest, fits on the driver too. When it does become mandatory next year, I mean, he seems pretty confident that, you know, like everything in Formula One, they find every margin and it improves and improves and improves until suddenly we're not talking about it anymore and it just becomes natural. This was all as a result of that Qatar race, if you remember, a couple of years ago, where you had the likes, I think it was Esteban Ocon, who I think, apologies if you're eating, but
well, it was Logan Sargent, wasn't it? Logan Sargent had to retire because it was finished.
But Ocon was sick in his helmet from heat exhaustion. So a lot of drivers really struggled in that race, and that's kind of what prompted the initial design of it.
Need MFA Lim 1. MFA Lim 1. Yeah, apologies.
So that's Fernando Alonso being told some sort of settings, but maybe it sounded like it came a bit too late for him setting up before a flying lap.
Yeah, doing it between 17 and 18 when you're just about to start your push lap is not ideal. You'd want that probably either between 13, 14 or 15, 16. I'd say that he'll be coming in afterwards and saying, look guys, if you want me to make an adjustment like that, a default change or something a bit more significant, please do it earlier on in the lap.
Fernando Alonso is currently down in 20th, but has been doing some race simulation runs, so not chasing outright time. Just less than 15 minutes remaining of this free practice 3 session. Kimi Antonelli leads Lando Norris and Alex Albon. Lewis Hamilton is currently down in 7th. We're watching his teammate Charles Leclerc go around at the moment, but I'll tell you what, Lewis Hamilton, we mentioned, was noted for a red flag infringement. I believe Andrew Benson has seen the incident and can give us some more information. Andrew?
Yes, I've just watched F1 TV have just played a replay of what we believe is the incident. My colleague Mark Hughes is sitting next to me in the media centre watching it, and we've just looked at it. And what happens is that the red flag comes out and Hamilton slows down, as he should do for the red flag. And then as he's coming into turns 16 and 17, which is like the final chicane, he accelerates into that corner. And I don't know whether he's going at absolutely racing speed, but it's getting into that sort of area, and also carries on being quick into the pit lane, as if maybe he's practicing a pit lane entry or something like that, which drivers have to do in practice sessions. So I suspect it might be that the stewards think he's gone too fast through that section of the track. I don't know whether Sam could say anything about whether that would be considered acceptable behaviour, to be going slowly under a red flag and then accelerate through a series of corners before coming into the pits.
Well, Andrew, firstly, hi there, mate. Hope you're well.
That's good, thanks, Sam. You too.
But it's not acceptable, is it? Rules are rules. They've got a delta to stick to when it comes to virtual safety cars, and they've got a speed to adhere to under red flag conditions as well. And you go over that, and it's kind of a slam dunk when it comes to a penalty. I don't know what penalty will be coming his way when it's done in a free practice session. But it's not. Sam, I mean, it's not good.
It'll depend on the speed, won't it? How much he's gone over, if he's gone over the speed that they're expecting the drivers to go at through that section. But if he has gone too fast, you know, again, it's not as serious an offence as overtaking, maybe, but I remember a few years ago in Austin, Sebastian Vettel, he got a grid penalty for a red flag infringement in free practice. So yeah, it could be a grid penalty.
Yeah, exactly.
If they consider him guilty.
Yeah, rules are rules. You know, you look at the pit lane speed limit. If you overshoot your braking and speed into the pit lane, it's a slam dunk. This, again, for Lewis, it is a little bit of a slam dunk, I think. But we will wait and see. We're now on board with Isaac Hadjar, who goes second in the Racing Bulls car. I think the track is really ramping up at the end of this session. A lot of people now doing quali simulations. Lando Norris crosses the line, goes fastest, nearly 4 tenths clear of Charles Leclerc. So at the moment we've got a McLaren, a Ferrari and a Racing Bulls ahead of Antonelli and Albon. So a nice mixture at the top of the timings. Oscar Piastri comes across the line, and it's a McLaren 1-2.
But Piastri won't be happy that he's over 3/10 behind his teammate Lando Norris, as the track does indeed ramp up. Soft tyre running, the call of the day. Max Verstappen is out there on the soft tyres now. Was on the medium, has swapped them over. Hamilton's coming through the final sector now. The last couple of corners await him. The DRS flies open as he straightens up down the start-finish straight. He actually splits the two McLaren drivers, but is about 2.5 tenths away from Lando Norris's quickest time. Ollie Behrman's actually running fairly well today, and so too is Esteban Ocon now. Both Hasses inside the top 8. Ocon ahead of Behrman, but it's Max Verstappen, who has never been on pole position in Singapore, has never won the Singapore Grand Prix. It's the only track on the calendar that he has not won on. And the man who has won the last 2 races in succession, looking to try and take to the top again, and in this final practice session he goes to the top by over 1/10 and a half almost. Verstappen a 1:30, 1:48. Norris second. Carlos Sainz in the Williams didn't have the best first sector, but flying in the final sector. Third quickest ahead of Hamilton. Piastri fifth. Leclerc, we'll see what he's got. He's on an outlap at the moment. Hadjar is now down to 7th ahead of Antonelli, who is fastest of anybody in the first sector. His teammate George Russell, welcome to the party. Mercedes once more. He's gone up to 2nd, 1/2 tenth away from Verstappen, as Antonelli pops himself up into 4th.
Yeah, track really coming to the drivers now as we're getting into the last 10 minutes of the session. Antonelli proving that the tyre can actually take 2 laps, so you can do a cool down and a second push, and it's still there or thereabouts to extract a little bit more lap time.
Just to come back to our Hamilton discussion, that has now been elevated. The incident involving car 44 will be investigated after the session. That is for that red flag infringement that we were speaking about a few moments ago. So we'll keep you updated on that as and when we know more, but it might well be Lewis Hamilton in a spot of bother before Sunday's Grand Prix, as we're just getting a replay of a bit of traffic paradise for Charles Leclerc, who finds himself all stuck behind the green Aston Martin of Lance Stroll coming through 16 and 17.
It looks like Lance Stroll was about to try and start a push lap and wanted the track position over the Ferrari, who I think was just on a cool, maybe going for a second push, as Gasly just runs out of track there on the exit of turn 8. Quite a difficult area of the track. We saw Liam Lawson getting unstuck there. Then we were going on board with him down towards turn 10 through the difficult 11-12 section. A Mercedes cuts across the runoff not to get in his way. The Alpines, they look like they were making a step forward kind of a third or halfway through the season, and for me they've just dropped off again, dropped off the back of the grid.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't think they're expecting much from the remainder of the season, as Gasly finds the Sauber of Nico Hülkenberg down, I think that's turn 14, and rather gets out of it, ruins his lap. This is something we're going to have to watch out for in qualifying. Traffic management, we talk about it a lot in Formula One, but particular at street tracks where it is so difficult to find yourself a clean lap. Yuki Tsunoda is the man we're currently watching, making his way over the Anderson Bridge at the moment into the hairpin at turn 13. Let's hear from Russell.
Still struggling for confidence in the corner. I crashed yesterday, just the rears on the edge.
Copy. We'll take a look if there's anything on tools.
So that's interesting there from George Russell. He crashed at turn 16 yesterday. It just looked like the rears locked up and he slid into the wall, and that was his practice session done and dusted. So interesting to hear he's still struggling for confidence at the very least through that corner. Let's see what Yuki Tsunoda has on the soft tyre around the final corner. Only enough for 16th fastest for the Japanese driver, a 1:31.440. Max Verstappen is the quickest driver out on track, a 1:30.148.
But when we're on board with Yuki Tsunoda there, it doesn't look like he's doing anything wrong. There's no glaring mistakes in the driving. You're thinking, well, he's putting the car in there or thereabouts the right position on the track. You're looking for car attitude signals, and is the car doing anything strange? And it all looks okay. It's just little bits everywhere. There's not one corner that you'd say he's definitely got that wrong or he's made a mistake. It is simply every single corner there's half a tenth or a tenth of a second missing right now for Yuki.
When you were here for GP2 and you went qualifying, back then, what was the GPS sort of tracking systems like? Did you have a lot of help with that and your engineer on the pit wall?
No, back then with all the high-rise buildings, it kind of
this is my point, because
the GPS.
That's the thing. There was GPS, but in Singapore, it's particularly actually difficult.
Yes.
Even now for the Formula One teams.
Monaco and Singapore were particularly difficult. But he's got Max Verstappen, the best driver on the grid at the moment. He's got his data. And I know that Max will get updates before Yuki. I know Max has got a different driving style to pretty much everybody else and has a difference of what he wants in the car and what he expects from the car. But even so, there's really good data there for Yuki to learn off.
Never scored points in Singapore has Yuki Tsunoda, hoping to amend that record as we saw it live, the little incident between Nico Hülkenberg and Pierre Gasly coming into turn 14. Hülkenberg on the racing line going quite slowly. Gasly was on a hot lap and a bit of a misunderstanding, and Gasly's lap rather ruined on that front. Hülkenberg did put his hand up just to say sorry, so the German then aware that he was rather in the way of that one. But in that Sauber car, he's actually up in 8th at the moment. Lando Norris comes across the line for another lap on his soft tyres and doesn't improve on his lap time, stays third fastest.
It's quite interesting that Antonelli was able to get a second lap out of his tyre then. The McLaren looked like it couldn't quite achieve the same lap time on a second push lap. Piastri, I think he'll be disappointed with where he is at the end of this session. I can't imagine he'll go any quicker now. I might be proven
I'll tell you what though, if this ends up being a grid,
this was the grid, be a cracking grid. But my point is that Piastri is quicker than P7. I expect Piastri to be in the fight for pole position this evening. I expect Lando Norris to be in the fight. But now you've got to put George Russell in the conversation as well. You've got to put Antonelli. Do we put Carlos Sainz in the conversation for a front two rows? And obviously you never discount Max Verstappen.
No, and this is good from Kimi Antonelli actually. It looks like he had a pretty torrid European season, let's say that, and wasn't happy with his performances. Neither were the team. Toto Wolff calling some performances underwhelming. Yellow flag out on track. Has somebody found the runoff area? Quite possibly, but I think it's down at turn 1, so somebody's just gone off and had to rejoin round the bollard. You can't just cut back on there. You have to almost rejoin at the exit of turn 3 if you run wide at turn 1, so you don't cause any drama coming back onto the track. But good Baku for Antonelli. Didn't quite make the podium, but we know overtaking was so tricky, but it was a marked step up in improvement. Just on Oscar Piastri though, Sam, and in your opinion as a driver, do you think those mistakes that we saw from Piastri in Baku, the jump start, the crash into the wall, was that pressure for the first time getting to Oscar Piastri?
No, I think we are all guilty of building it up and making it more than what it is. Drivers make mistakes. We make mistakes every lap. There's no such thing as a perfect lap time. There's no such thing as a perfect lap. He just made 2 mistakes in a row, or 3. It was just one of those things. He had a bit of a stinker in Baku, but he'll be back on it again. If he has a difficult one here, then you can say maybe it's pressure. Maybe the pressure's getting a bit much. He's been leading this thing for so long and it's crunch time. It might be psychologically affecting him. But for me, it was a blip, and he'll be over that and he'll be raring to go this evening.
Even Schumacher made mistakes.
Everybody. Even you, Harry.
No, never. I absolutely don't. If anybody doesn't make mistakes, it's definitely me. Come on. Anyway, just over 2 minutes remaining of free practice 3, the last practice session before we go qualifying later on when the floodlights illuminate this Marina Bay Street track. We'll be on air on Sports Extra 2 for that, by the way, at 5 to 2 before the session starts at 2 o'clock this afternoon. That's always a good one to listen to, so I hope you can join us for that later as we continue to see the last laps being done. So a few drivers are able to push on their second flying lap on the soft, but not many many improvements came in. There was a brief yellow which didn't help things, but again, that's going to be a factor you have to take into consideration when we go qualifying as well. Hadjar was one of the few to improve on his second run, actually. He climbed up to 6th, just behind Sainz and ahead of Hamilton. Antonelli, the other one as well, 2/10 away, up in 4th. But it's Verstappen who leads the way, as that looked rather tight from Pierre Gasly, literally shoving Max Verstappen up against the wall at turn 15 at a snail's pace. It looked like they were both getting out of the way for a quicker car coming through, which was Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin.
No, it did, Harry. It was Pierre Gasly's on a hot lap. Colapinto saw him coming last minute and wanted to get out the way for his teammate, and in doing so nearly put the world champion in the wall. It was quite something to behold. That Kimi Antonelli going again purple in sector 2. Do you know what? The last couple of Grand Prix he's made a big stride, isn't he? I think he is a confidence driver, and he's starting to manipulate that car and throw it around with a bit more confidence now, and he looks a little bit more in control of it. I don't know what's been said back at Brackley, but he does look in a much better place, and we're seeing the results now. P3, less than 1/10 of a second behind Max Verstappen.
Ooh, as Alex Albon locks up, couldn't get it turned in coming into the hairpin at turn 11, has to put it into reverse and just about gets that turned back around again. I'd like to see that Verstappen incident again with the Alpine. You're right, it was Gasly on a hot lap. It was the other Alpine of Franco Colapinto, so that was a great timing from me.
So you do make mistakes.
We'll edit that one. We can edit, right? Gasly's currently down in 19th though on that one. Colapinto was up in 16th. I would very much like to see that one again, as the checkered flag is out at the end of free practice 3, but Oscar Piastri still pushing out there on the soft tyre. Personal best through the first sector, makes his way through the left-hander of turn 10, which arcs itself around before you then flick right, then left over the Anderson Bridge. The Alpine gets nicely out of the way. That was Gasly into the left-hander now and makes his way down along the Esplanade towards turn 14. So another dose of DRS here, fastest of anybody through the middle sector, up by almost 1/10 of a second. Norris isn't finding as much time though, but Norris ahead at the moment in 4th. Piastri's down in 8th, looking to improve. Verstappen, the quickest time, a 1:31.48. Just 2 more corners to go then for the man who currently leads the championship by 25 points, down in 8th. And the final practice session comes to a close. Piastri finds time to put himself up into 2nd, 17,000 of a second away from Max Verstappen. Norris can't improve. He ends up down in 5th, but identical lap times for Antonelli and Norris mean the top 5 is split by less than 1/10 of a second.
It's looking juicy, ready for qualifying later, isn't it? Really, really close between the top 5. And as we go on board with Lewis Hamilton into the final chicane, 16-17, and I think that's Max Verstappen, isn't it? Just not wanting to give him the room, and unnecessary fight between those two. We've seen them battle on track brilliantly before and leave each other no room, but that was another case there in free practice 3. Alex Albon trying to carry too much speed at the hairpin at turn 13, and the rear of the car just saying no thank you.
Now, here we go. We're getting a look at what happens if Verstappen dived down the inside of the Alpine of Colapinto, and then Colapinto was looking in his left mirror at the car coming through, which was his teammates.
I mean, everybody was compromised in that situation. Gasly probably didn't see the apex and missed it by half a metre. Colapinto nearly put Verstappen in the wall.
Generally just a bit messy on that front.
Really messy. And yeah, Gasly down in 19th. I think that his lap was massively compromised there. You've got to think that the braking for 14 is critical, and then you've got to get a good exit out of 14, because then that carries you all the way down to 16. It's a long old straight and a DRS zone, so you don't get the exit of 14, you're going to hemorrhage lap time, and I think that's probably what happened and why he's so far off his teammate.
Well, let's catch up with Jenny down in the pit lane for the last time in this session. Getting quite spicy towards the end of this final practice, Jenny.
Very spicy. I cannot wait. I'm so excited for qualifying. It's one of the best of the whole season. You know, Monaco, it's fabulous. But come here, under the floodlights of Singapore, and something special just happens. The best drivers have to rise to the game and the challenge, and we have seen some stunning pole laps here. Can Max Verstappen do it? He's got a lot of fans here. The crowd are willing him on, but I just think he's never done it here before. Is this his time? I don't know, but I'm excited anyway.
Yeah, it is going to be one to join us for. Max Verstappen fastest, ahead of Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, Lando Norris. The top 5, Sam, separated by less than a tenth of a second. We knew it was going to be tight, but I think we are in for a cracker of a qualifying. Who, though, do you think needs to find something ahead of quali?
Who needs to find something? Oh, that's a tough one. Well, for sure, the glaring one is Liam Lawson needs to get back out on track and not stuff it in a wall for starters. Fernando Alonso, I expected to see more from him in this session, although I know he was focusing on long runs. And Ferrari have fallen away a little bit with ultimate pace, but at the front it's fast, it's furious, and it's so tight. And to be honest, any of those top 5 could be on pole position this evening.
It's going to be one to tune in for, and you can do that on Sports Extra 2 later this afternoon. We'll be on 5 minutes before the green light comes on at 2 o'clock this afternoon UK time, so I hope you can join us for then. Max Verstappen finishing the final practice session fastest, ahead of the man who leads the championship, Oscar Piastri, with George Russell's Mercedes in third. Kimi Antonelli, Lando Norris the top 5, with Sainz, Hadjar, Hamilton, Hülkenberg and Leclerc the top 10. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.